Hey everyone, thank you guys for joining us today for our webinar. Today we're going to be talking about how to optimize your healthcare inventory management with AI and RFID. And I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves and then I'll start talking right after that real quick.
Hey, thanks, Animal. So my name is Jerry Abiog. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Standard Insights. And what we do and what we are an AI service, analytics, and marketing platform. And we help businesses leverage their first-party data to build their economic moat. So we've been in business since 2019, well before the AI and Chat GPT craze, and we built the platform ourselves.
Thanks for hosting, Animal, and my name is Ben Kleinman. I'm a principal at Harborside Strategy, and we're a boutique consulting firm primarily helping customers and clients with strategic design, project implementation, and change management. Most of our work is with the Fortune 500 companies, primarily in the healthcare sector. Fatima.
Thank you. My name is Fatimah Irwin. I'm a senior channel manager for Ameta Group. We are a major distributor based out of Los Angeles that specializes in enterprise technology and security products, and the exclusive distributor for Eurovo products, which also includes the RFID line.
All right, and just before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that it will be recorded and it will be sent to everyone who's registered. So if you just hopped in and you haven't registered, please do so we can get you this recording. And please stay on mute if possible. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. We'll try to get them as many as we can during the webinar, but for the most part, they'll be answered near the end. All right, let's get started.
Thanks, Anmol. All right, so what we're going to start with today is just kind of setting the stage, helping ground everyone in terms of the industry, where supply chain is today, where healthcare supply chain is on top of that, because it's more complex, of course, as you all know. We'll get everyone grounded as far as what RFID means, what artificial intelligence means, all those kinds of things. And then once we're all on the same page, we'll spend most of our time looking at how we can use RFID and artificial intelligence to help really address three things that we've seen with some of our customers that are top challenges for the supply chain folks that we've all been working with. Labor is really tight and really constricted right now, so that's a big issue. Costs are always going up, and that's a challenge. And then one of the cool things that we've noticed that we've been helping our clients with, finding lost sources of revenue amidst all that hidden data, that can be some pretty cool uses of this technology. So we'll go through those. And we'll end with just some pointers and tips on how to get started with this whole approach and kind of give you some tools to help you get started there. So let's dig in. I'm not going to read all these things because you can read them yourself, but just to set the stage, primarily in COVID, the beginning of COVID, we all sort of realized that the supply chain system as we knew it, where everyone had been shifting over the years to a just-in-time manufacturing approach, wasn't very resilient, especially when you had critical components or necessary things that all of a sudden were in very, very short supply. That whole approach just broke down. And we saw that really exposed some of the weaknesses in the way the supply chain is built right now. And that led in COVID to about 94% of the Fortune 1000 companies experiencing a disruption in their supply chain. So pretty much the whole industry was disrupted. In a survey that Reuters and KPMG put out, there was a rough dollar amount, $182 million per company for some of the larger companies out there in terms of lost revenue because of those disruptions. That was in about 2021, 2022. Fortunately, that came down, but it only came down to about 82 million per company. So still a lot of opportunity there. One of the things that now you can imagine, if we layer on the complexity of the healthcare supply chain, where you have the need for redundancy and maintaining peak stock levels for emergencies, coupled with the demand for extremely high levels of customer service and all sorts of limited staff, especially coming out of COVID, staff shortages, staff burnout, and limited budgets, and of course, limited product shelf life for many key medicines and even some medical devices. You have all sorts of challenges. And then the last thing I'll mention that just makes the supply chain in healthcare a little bit more fun and exciting than maybe some other industries is that in healthcare, you might even think of it as several sub supply chains that each have their own layers of complexity. So you have supplies for medical surgery. So you know, think of going to visit the doctor, surgeries, or just band-aids and gauze, things like that. You have medical devices, that's a different supply chain, laboratories and lab results, pharmaceuticals, drugs, things like that. All the capital expenses, so anything around your buildings or that sort of thing. Purchase services, think of a vendor that might supply your laundry or do your laundry or help sterilize some of your equipment. And then, of course, food and cafeteria stuff. So it's ridiculously complex. And you can imagine how the healthcare supply chain was just even more disrupted and continues to feel those shocks after COVID. So the time is ripe for some of the things we're going to be talking about today. And the last thing I'll mention, Jerry, before turning it over to you to start explaining a little bit more about artificial intelligence, is just that none of the stuff we're talking about today is new in terms of being used by real companies, industry leading companies out in the world. You have Walmart, you have Target, Amazon, UPS, and others doing all kinds of great stuff to manage their supply chains, manage their inventories using these same technologies. So it's the time is right for us to start thinking about this in the healthcare sector.
And that's a good point, Ben. To say, democratization of something, right? Making it easily, accessible. Just to give you an example on the business to consumer side of things, flat screen TVs. They used to be real expensive. Now you can get a monster one for a lot less than they were 15 to 20 years ago. So similar to what we're seeing technology across all sectors, and particularly with AI and RFID.
Yeah, absolutely. So Admiral, let's jump to the next slide, and Jerry, you can lead us into our discussions about AI, and then we'll talk about RFID.
So I love this quote, Albert Einstein: "You can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions." And to dovetail the prior slide with the democratization of AI and RFID, people are people, and they're typically stuck in their old ways, myself included. But what's different between now and way back when? So I'm in my early 50s, and definitely, as we saw on the prior side, there are a lot of challenges in my 30 years or so since graduating college that are hitting us in the work world. So Ben had mentioned labor shortages. We've got rising interest rates. We got the UAW strike that's happening right now. But to look on the bright side, we talked about democratization. We have technology now, right? Versus in the 90s or early 2000, technology wasn't as prevalent. I mean, we got a mini computer in our pocket these days. So a lot more things are more solvable in these days. And with these technologies, you've got to remember, you've got to be forward thinking to act, because we saw past companies like Blockbuster Video, right? They didn't adapt and pivot. Now there's Netflix. Blockbuster's no longer there. You've got Sears and Borders Books. And if you want to take a look in the recent past, biggest companies have come about during difficult times. So you got Microsoft. They came around in the 70s, 80s, and more recently with WhatsApp, Uber Eats. All these companies were formed during difficult times. So we feel, and given this presentation, that there's a way for the healthcare companies that are listening to this that, hey, yeah, there are challenges, but we can certainly overcome them with the help of human help, right? Ben, you're a consultant, but then along with that, with technologies like AI and RFID. Now, since I've owned Standard Insights in 2019, the talk about AI is, lack of a better word, just nuts. But I always ask, or when I always get asked, what is the definition of artificial intelligence? A good, simple Cliff Notes definition is AI is getting a computer to think and act like a human. So truthfully, it's been part of our everyday lives for the last 10 years or so. You've got Amazon product recommendations, Netflix movie recommendations. But in the recent past, just at the start of this year, AI's come to the forefront of almost everyone. And that's because you got the rise of ChatGPT. And what do you see here? You see a flip phone and you see a smartphone. Both do the same things. They make phone calls, right? But one is much more powerful than the other. BI, the flip phone, looks at things from a historical, backward-looking perspective. AI, the smartphone, looks at things from a forward-looking perspective using predictive and prescriptive analytics. So case in point, most healthcare institutions, whether you're a vendor or even a hospital, are typically using an ERP to track things. However, if you walk into work and your ERP tells you how many gauze pads or EpiPens sold yesterday, well, that's business intelligence. However, if your ERP system tells you how many gauze pads or EpiPens will sell tomorrow, next week, next month, that's AI. It doesn't matter what tool you are using with AI. It could be Grammarly, it could be ChatGPT, could be shopping on Amazon. All those things fundamentally look at past patterns to make future predictions. Over to you, Fatimah.
All right. Now I know RFID has been around, for the last 20 years, but it is newer in the healthcare industry. So just to give you guys a brief on how the RFID technology actually works, is the products, let's say it's individual vials, gauze pads, anything like that we want to track through the supply chain, is affixed with an RFID tag. That tag has a very tiny antenna inside that label. And then the facility has either a fixed RFID reader, or they have a mobile one like you see on the image here that extrapolates the RFID information into the back end of the ERP or WMS system. Now, it's important to note that Jerry's solution, it ties into the back end ERP system. It is not located or configured onto the individual devices. This is really important to note, especially in healthcare, because due to HIPAA violations, and sensitive data, we don't want people walking away with that barcode RFID reader or, ripping out a fixed mount. It's tied into your back end where you keep your inventory, and you guys are in control of the software and what kind of data you want to extrapolate.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And for the benefit of this crowd today, most of the stuff we're talking about is moving goods and not really getting into the nuances of patients and patient data and notes within a hospital's electronic record system or things like that. So that's the one nice thing, is as complicated and as crazy as the supply chain aspect of it is, at least most of the time we're not dealing with patient data or sensitive patient information, things like that. So that's a good thing.
That's a good point. Ben and Fatimah first, that the AI is only analyzing data from the back end, not from the for RFID reader. And Ben, that's a good point. The subject of this call, we don't want to get into patient data. That's a whole nother level of complexity that we're not, experts at, but at least the hard goods that are transferring from point A to point B, within the supply chain, we can definitely help your organization with that. With Fatimah, get an accurate read of what's coming in, what's going out, and then with the AI on that, analyzing the data that RFID collects to make predictions.
I couldn't have paid you more for a better segue, Jerry. So
yeah,
let's dive into some of the things that we wanted to focus on for this call in terms of where we see the combination of RFID and AI being really powerful, and not just in a hypothetical sense, but in a really actual real world use cases type of sense, and things that you can go out and do pretty easily today. And so the first thing, I said at the beginning, we want to focus on three things. One was labor shortages, the other one was rising costs and ever increasing costs, and the last one was uncovering sources of revenue that are hidden in the data. And so the first one we'll start with is labor shortages. Everyone is aware that the market has just been topsy-turvy since COVID, and coming out of COVID, especially in healthcare, people are just burned out. There's just a lack of people going into the field with the rising population, at least in the US, in terms of age. There's a bigger need for more healthcare providers. And so it's very challenging, at least in the US here, as well as many other countries in Europe and other parts of the world, where there's just a need for more people. And since that's not going to happen overnight, what we want to do is take advantage, like Jerry was saying before, of leveraging the technology to do more with less. So in this case, we're not really thinking about using the technology to replace people. At least the way I think about it is, let's use the technology to automate some things and let the people add the value that only people can add. So we're going to try to upskill or reskill some of the people that are already out there, let them bring their insights to what the data can bring to the table and the AI can bring to the table. So these are going to be things like reducing manual entry. If you can have a scanner, like Fatimah was talking about, automatically tell you that you had 7 boxes of Band-Aids come in and 8 oxygen tanks come in and 7 new wheelchairs and 4 foldable beds or whatever it is, that's fantastic information. I don't have to sit there keying it in and looking at, tags and all that kind of stuff. Saves me a ton of time. What I can tell you is, oh, we're short 2 beds because we just got 3 people admitted yesterday and we already had 4. So now we're really short on beds. Maybe we should order some more next time, or maybe we need to pull some from a different part of the hospital, that kind of thing. Or as a vendor, you can say, well, I see you ordering beds kind of on short notice. What if we just sent you a few more because you're probably going to need them come whatever flu season or anything like that. So these are things where the AI and the RFID can be really powerful tools to help and make it easier for you as an organization to do things that you wouldn't be able to do while your staff are running around and not really adding as much value as they could. So Fatimah, you have some examples focusing on our healthcare providers. Jerry, you have some focusing on our vendor friends. It looked like you were going to make a point though.
Yeah, quick. So Ben, you made a good point, man. You had mentioned insights, right? Insights from the data. And insights, that's why we named the company Standard Insights. So just a side note there. But yeah, Fatimah, please share your example.
Yeah, so everybody, has been aware that there's a shortage of, nurses and EMTs, and especially with Medicaid now dictating that any long-term healthcare patients need to move outside of the 4 walls, we have even more of a need to make sure that the patient has everything that they need, whether it's oxygen tanks, wheelchairs, IVs, any of that kind of stuff. And then to make sure that ambulances and nurses and everybody out in the field has all of the stuff that they need as well. Not having, or with RFID and AI, we can be able to do data prescriptive analytics, which enables them to know which supplies are needed in the right place at the right time. And this also helps to save making sure that the supply chain is correct and that the nurses and ambulances are able to focus on caregiving, which is really what they're meant to do and what they're best at.
Fatimah made some good points, right? So now the AI can help predict things, on a macro level. So we're talking about labor shortages on the nursing side for the hospital staff. What about, on the vendor side? It could be argued maybe they're fighting labor shortages, maybe not. But I think you're in charge of channel partnerships over there. What if, as a distributor, you're distributing or representing over 100,000 different products, and you're selling those 100,000 different products to 6,000 hospitals? I would sure hope, and then let's say you have the Southeast region to include cities like Atlanta, to include cities like Jacksonville, Charlotte, and say those cities all have, say, 10 or so, hospitals. All those 10 hospitals in each of those 3 different cities, there's 30 hospitals, they're going to have different, buying patterns. Not every hospital, even though they're located in the same city, will have the same need for scrubs, EpiPens, or gauze pads. I live in Atlanta, near downtown, so the hospital near me will have different buying patterns than someone out in the suburbs. And then to address the labor shortages, if the channel partner is not looking at their past data to look at sales, they're just flying blind, right? So now with AI and RFID helping get an accurate count of inventory, It can make predictions. Not only that, but can you imagine having 100,000 products, selling to 6,000 hospitals, how much data that you would have? And if you were to do it on a manual, basis, that would cost that vendor, a lot of money to hire someone to analyze all that data. So instead of paying, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at a 6-figure salary, it'll be a lot less, do more with less. And that's how one way you can address, A, labor shortages, and B, the cost of labor.
Yeah, it's also helpful to get stuff out of people manually chunking through spreadsheets and more into adding the value in terms of what's in the spreadsheet. What patterns can I elevate? So what trends can I see? What spikes or valleys can I see? What outliers do I see?
Right.
And are they important, or are they just a random outlier? But at least let a human surface that up, and let a human with a little bit more knowledge of what's going on and than a machine try to help you interpret that, and then they can raise the flag if that's something critical that they see.
And you made a good point, because chunking through vast amounts of spreadsheets costs a lot of money. And with all the outside factors,
and it's
inflation,
inefficient.
it's inefficient. So
for sure.
Good point.
For sure.
Besides the costs and downtime involved with any of the nurses or employees having to search through multiple cabinets and supplies areas to try to find the stuff that they need, they now can have everything stocked ahead of time because of the data that we're able to interpret and be able to have in those facilities when they're needed.
Yeah, exactly. Let's dive into the next one in terms of cost increases, since we're sort of tipping our toes in those waters. The thing that's interesting about this is that some of the industry leaders in other industries, like I mentioned before, they're actually taking their supply chains and transitioning them from purely a cost center to a revenue center. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of finding new revenue sources. But here it's important maybe to just think of it as trying to flatline some of those cost increases and take some of those out of the system. And so these are things that the data and the predictive powers of AI can really help with, in terms of really surfacing usage patterns that you may not have seen before, helping you optimize your inventory and management and purchasing, and when you purchase things and bulk buy, or reduce the need to buy stuff in emergent situations when prices will most likely be higher. And then I'm sure Jerry will hit on this in terms of demand prediction, and having a tool as powerful as AI and some of the AI models, which just way outpaces some of the simple regressions that you can do in most BI tools or in Excel even. So Fatimah, like you started us off before, maybe start us off with a hospital example, and then Jerry will look to you for a vendor supply example.
Yeah, so some facilities have reported having to overorder as much as 160% of their supplies. Right there, if we can better analyze and know what's needed, that's a cost savings in on itself. And then we have, an efficiency cost savings within the hospitals, especially because we want to do a lot more with less employees and be more efficient at it. So let's say we have, a metal box that cold vaccines need to be kept in. Historically, with the manual barcode process, we would have to open up that box, take out the condensation packet, and individually scan all of those, 70, 75 vials that come in a metal box. With RFID, we're able to use a single device, run the entire box under the RFID reader or wave it, and it automatically can count for all that inventory within the metal box, eliminating the additional work and process of having to open it, take out the condensation pack, and doing that manual process. It can also take it a step further with Jerry's software to be able to say, okay, well, these are how many vaccines we have on the pharmaceutical level or the manufacturing level. In these areas, during a certain season, we have an uptick in flus, or a special need, we're able to get more inventory over more accurately and not waste a lot of product, and be able to implement a first expiry, first out method within these facilities. So they don't have waste on which vaccines are, expiring sooner and they were possibly kept in the back of the cooler. And we're able to have a much more efficient process across the entire supply chain.
And that's a good point, Fatima. And you're talking about being able to scan things quickly, easily, unlike the cousin who write, barcodes. There was a study put out by Advanced Mobility that with the help of RFID, with everything set up correctly, that RFID can help lower labor costs with regards to inventory by as much as 40%. Now you layer on AI, especially, if you're a vendor, and we can look at, with us anyway, using regression algorithms and seasonality algorithms, we can make predictions on how much inventory you need to stock, right? Gauze pads, EpiPens, oxygen mask, or what have you. So with that, when you can get, with the help of RFID, before you can predict it, you've got to measure it, right? So now we've got it accurately measured, we can make, predictions. So if you can predict how much of a product will be used in a certain amount of time, it'll prevent, stockouts. Because if you don't have enough inventory or on hand, that hospital is losing money. Conversely, if you've got too much inventory, you're losing money having that inventory sitting around. So with blending RFID, getting an accurate count, and AI with making predictions, it can go a long way. And at least in this example, with inventory and labor, help that hospital, healthcare institution improve their bottom line profitability.
And it's quality too, to Fatima's point about cold packs and cold storage and things like that. If you're opening a pack and you're scanning individual vials by vials, you might run the risk of temperature excursions that go beyond a certain limit. And typically that's bad from a quality control perspective. And so if you're able to reduce that and minimize that, it means, like Fatima was saying, you can get back whatever is in those vials, if it's COVID vaccine or other drugs, other medicines for patients, you can keep them in a much more stable and quality insured state, which just perpetuates the whole virtuous cycle of care throughout the organization. So it's sort of a nice knock-on benefit of all the things we've been talking about in terms of cost increases and labor shortages and all that. But these tools can also help you improve your quality in that sense, just by automating and sort of abstracting that manual scan, manual check process to a different level. So it's pretty cool stuff. Let's look at our last major theme here in terms of lost revenue. And so this is where I think we get into some really fun stuff that we may not have been able to do with prior technologies, in terms of really uncovering and unpacking some cool nuggets in our data. And these are going to be things that, because we have RFID automating so much of our scanning and automating so much of our data intake, we can be pretty confident in the quality of that data. We're going to have a pretty good level of fidelity in terms of it's good quality data that we can build a predictive engine on top of. And that's really key. And so then you start using all the sophistication of artificial intelligence and how it can scan across so much data, no pun intended. And you can really get at some cool insights as far as what your customers are buying, what things they might not be buying because they forgot or they didn't even realize that you sold. So for example, you might think, okay, we sell scrubs, hospital scrubs, but the company that we sell to doesn't know we also sell booties and face masks and head coverings and gloves and all that. So what if we just make our customers understand that we can sell all of that? Now we can say, well, based on the number of scrubs you're buying, you're probably going to need X amount of these other things. Let's put together a package for you. That sounds pretty attractive, right? It's one stop for all that sort of personal protective equipment. So that's kind of cool stuff. Of course, there's also the ability to look at customer sentiment. What are your customers thinking about you based on what they bought? Are they more likely to buy other things, similar things? Have they suddenly fallen off a cliff in terms of buying something? Maybe that's a signal for your teams to go out and look into what's going on. Um, all good stuff. So, like we've done before, Fatima, maybe you can kick us off with a hospital specific
Yeah.
example, and then Jerry,
And
get
yeah, it's been really to
slides.
piggyback on what you said, because over order undering can hurt the entire supply chain. We can potentially have, some facilities, hoarding goods while other facilities, really, really need those. So this enables, more accurate forecasting, much more efficiently and at a much better rate. But we collect all this data, and I think really the power is the RFID can do so much at collecting that data. Well, how can we take it a step further? And what do we do with all this data now? And this is where the AI comes in to help build additional ROI for your facilities to see even more cost savings. And then, what if we, install this on, across the supply chain? The savings then become exponential, because then we're dealing from, the manufacturer and distributor all the way to the customer, and can get that forecasting across the board and across that omni-channel.
Yeah, no, it's right, Fatima. You made a good point. I mean, with RFID, and I think, and this is why I like our partnership, because RFID is one piece of the puzzle. It's a piece of hardware that accurately, collects, data. But they say, that's that saying, data is the new oil, right? AI thrives on data, and if you want to, argue, Tesla is more of a data company than a car company. So you got RFID, you got massive amounts of data that you collect. What do you do with that? So let's take that to the vendor. There are probably 100 distributors that work in the healthcare space. Again, if we use that example before, that particular distributor may have 100,000 products selling to 6,000 hospitals. Before we talked about AI doing predictions on a macro level, what hospital gets what, but now we can do it on an individualized level, right? People that bought this, and this is really just a fancy way of saying that McDonald's did in the 70s and 80s before technology took over. Would you like fries with that? But now, as a vendor, the old upsell cross-sell, we learned that in marketing 101, in the 90s. But without help of RFID collecting the inventory, data, and AI making predictions, I mean, you got 100,000, products to 6,000 hospitals. It's going to go a lot further than, hey, would you like fries with that? I mean, there's gobs and gobs of SKUs that you've got to deal with. So I think here, and during this whole discussion, blending both, AI and RFID. And why does that matter? Well, prior examples helping with, address, inventory, right? Challenges and labor shortages, that's helping with the bottom line. Here, if we can get someone to buy more stuff, upsell, cross-sell, you don't have to swing it out of the ballpark, but just, singles here and there, that's going to add up. Now that's helping that hospital or healthcare institution improve their top line growth.
And how powerful would it be for a manufacturer or supplier to proactively call their customer or their clinic or their hospital and say, hey, we can tell that you're running low on XYZ for this location. We'll go ahead and get you a box out. You can do kitting and be able to forecast much more easily and more efficiently.
And in a way that's super personalized. So before, maybe you were doing that at the level of a healthcare system that might span 6 or 7 hospitals in the Atlanta metro area, for example. Now you can probably imagine how effective and how cool it would be to be able to do that at a floor level in a given hospital. So what the oncology team needs is different from what the cardiovascular team needs, is different from the kidney function team or the radiology group or whatever different functions are throughout the hospital. You can now tailor all that, and it's so efficient using the RFID and the AI that it's just mind-boggling almost. For Jerry, you were saying,
Yeah.
for
So
humans
Ben, I
like
mean,
us, it's amazing what you can do.
so you made a good point there, right? And it's not about, okay, yeah, I'm part of Standard Insights, but McKinsey put out a study that AI-driven personalized recommendations can drive sales by as much as 15% or more. Bain put out a study that driving repeat business just by as much as little as 5% can improve profitability by 25 to 95%. So these are proven studies that are out there. You can just Google it, but just getting an accurate measure of what you have on hand, RFID, right? Before you start measuring, you got to have an accurate count before you start predicting. But now we can make predictions. Will it all be perfect? Absolutely not. Nothing's perfect, right? ChatGPT gets it wrong. Amazon gets it wrong. Facebook gets it wrong, but they're often more right than they are wrong, right? So what's that saying? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think that's what the saying is. But there are studies out there, just a little. I mean, we're just talking about base hits, right? With the data, just incremental improvements add up to big improvements in the long run.
And another fantastic segue, Jerry. You're earning your dollars here.
Yeah.
You're earning your keep. In terms of where we might go next with all of this. So, Anmo, let's jump to the last slide that we have for you. And to Jerry's point, start small. And if you start small, what you want to think about is what's an interesting question for you, for your organization, and why would you invest in even a little bit of time and effort to get an answer to that? And were you going to do anything with that answer? Is your leadership team bought in, or is this just going to be something that sits on a shelf in somebody's closet, right? So if you've got that urge to understand ways to improve your processes and improve your, like we've been talking about, your staff efficiency and kind of up your bottom line in some ways, then I think that you can do a lot with just a small proof of concept. And that's something that I really just preach with a lot of our customers. And I'm sure Jerry and Fatimah, you do as well. Just do a little proof of concept to see the benefits. And it can be so easy to just see what the data and the predictive engine can do. And then you'll get a feel for where you want to point that next. And so that's a good way to start. Learn what it can do, learn how you want to adapt it for your organization, build some momentum. And critically, it's about bringing your employees on that journey. So getting people in the front lines, for example, at the hospital. Do you have a nurse or a doctor who's helping you understand ways that this technology can make a difference in their daily lives? Like, for example, would it help me as a nurse stop having to hoard stuff if I knew it would always be in the closet? That's a win for everybody, right? In the same kinds of things. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop and turn it over, Jerry, to you, and Fatimah, to you for any last comments here, is just before you start, like I was saying, ask yourself why you're doing it, but then think about how big you want to start with so that you have some sort of finite understanding of what you're going after and agree who's going to be involved, how big the scope is going to be, and really what success might look like for that pilot. You're not talking about reinventing the entire wheel. You're just saying, what can we learn from this pilot, right? So those are all good things. Fatimah, Jerry, your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to let you guys know on our side, to get started is if you have a preferred partner, we do work through the partner community. So we're more than happy to connect with them to do a proof of concept. We do complimentary demos for any of the facilities. So like has been mentioned, if we want to test like an inventory room or a closet with the fixed reader, we can accomplish that. So we have the fixed readers, we have the handheld devices, and then we even have RFID printers that can print the RFID tags and encode any of the information that you need to, if you wanted to make your own labels, or if you're part of the manufacturing process and this is something you want to implement, through the supply chain to your end users. And then Jerry, how do they get started with your software?
Yeah, so good points, Fatimah, and Ben, you made a good point too. This is something all relatively new, right? So it's not like we're selling ERP solutions to healthcare institutions, that's been around for a while. This is about selling the vision, right? What's that saying? You don't know what you don't know, but start small. To Ben's point, you don't have to boil the ocean. So what we could do for a proof of concept, earlier talked about, predictive, recommendations for your healthcare institution for a proof of concept. We could get a small piece of data and that'll be determined, and we could show you the power of AI and the personalized and predictive recommendations, and then we can take it from there. But yeah, start small. In baseball terms, we're just looking for just base hits right now. You don't have to hit a home run. Let's go for the base hit, then the double, and then we can figure it out later.
Right. And so last slide is our contact info. If you have questions, I think you can reach out to any or all of us, and you'll get this, so you don't have to scribble it down feverishly. You'll get this recording and a link to this info, so you can catch us there. And maybe Anmol, let's open up to see if we have any questions.
Yep. The questions are open in the chat, and we do have a few. The first being, how much would it cost to get started with the small pilot?
So
Okay,
on our
yeah.
end, on our side, demos are complimentary for you to test out. And if it's a new facility, then we have site survey options that are available as well through us or through our partner community. But for the actual hardware demos, those are complimentary for the end user to test. And we really do want you guys, I'm a big fan of demos. I have no problem sending them out. We really want you guys to test it with your software and any of your proprietary stuff, and test it with your employees to make sure it's something that they like, because at the end of the day, it's the employees that are going to be able to use the technology for what it's worth.
For us, we do charge for a proof of concept, right? We want skin in the game. We will take, it's going to dependent on how clean your data is and how much data you give us on the charge for that. But we can discuss that during our discovery call.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that might be helpful just to wrap people's mind around it, for example, from a hospital perspective, if you're looking at how would I combine these, what would I do, how would I try it out, it might take something like pick a floor, so maybe a floor where you do a mixture of medical and procedures and surgical procedures and things like that. Pick a few items or one item from your supply closet that you know pretty well and that you use pretty regularly, because we want to have some decent amount of baseline data. And then work with Fatimah to put in a scanner in a closet or some sort of sensor. I don't know the right way you'd set that up, but she was going to tell you all about that. She's the expert. And so she and her team would set all that up, gather some data for a month, I don't know, a couple of weeks, depends on how fast your turnover is. Have Jerry grab all that data, and then you can start doing some cool discovery with that, see where that takes you. And so that might be a very tangible way to just get started with some of these things.
Yeah, it's very important to do a discovery call, make sure, we understand the application and the environment, what you guys are trying to accomplish. And so that we also get you the correct product, out. We don't want you to be in a laboratory or an inventory room and you need a stock room and you need a fixed reader versus, a handheld device. We want to make sure that we understand the application, the environment, and the proof of concept that you're wanting to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly.
And another question popped up here. It's so what are some challenges that companies face when implementing AI and RFID?
I can answer. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is, how clean their data is. And I make this joke, right? No one has an ugly baby. Everyone has clean data, which is, I'm not saying anything about ugly babies, but often than not, data is not clean. And there has to be some effort to go to make that, clean that data, scrub it before we run it through our AI engine. So that's probably the biggest challenge. And then the next would be leadership, but assuming you got the buy-in, of top line leadership. Make sure the frontline employees have buy-in as well, because it's that project, that implementation is only going to go so far if you don't have buy-in from the frontline employees.
Yes, and on the RFID side, one of the biggest challenges historically has always been metal interference. So if there's a lot of racking, if you have a warehouse or manufacturing facility, if you have your current access points and you haven't moved anything, we should be okay. But metal interference has historically been an issue. However, our DT50P from Eurovo has been proven to scan through metal in multiple applications, which is just an industry showstopper, and I am just so excited about it. So that's what we're saying, with the metal cold storage vaccine boxes, there's no need for that additional work in process and touches and potential contamination. We can now scan through the metal boxes without having to have specialty, metal tags or any other additional things that could cost in there. And then my second biggest issue, you guys may, if you're in technology, you may find this funny, but it's really happens a lot, is getting an RFID device and then getting RFID tags off of an Amazon or something. It's very important to note that RFID tags are dummy tags until that information is encoded into those tags. So if you get a dummy tag and you try to scan it, with an RFID device and it's not working, you guys are going to say, Fatimah, your device is a piece of garbage. We can either encode and get some samples from you from our label providers, or if you have any or wanted to test one of the RFID printers, it's just important that you're testing with encoded actual RFID tags and not dummy tags.
All right, and last question we have here is, how accurate are your AI predictions? So this is more so for Jerry and his software.
Yeah, that's a good question. Whoever sent that in. So the answer to that is, it depends. It's going to dovetail to my prior statement, is it's going to depend on how clean the data is. So that's number one. Number two, with AI, it gets smarter, over time. So we start off today, it may not be as smart, but over time, it's just going to get smarter. And this is the same principle. I mean, you got Amazon doing this, and even with, Tesla and all the data they collect, it's just going to get smarter over time. So accuracy improves over time.
All right.
And Jerry, that's just sorry, Anmol, just to jump in. That's I think an undersold point that is a differentiator between AI and traditional business intelligence tools.
Yeah.
Is that your BI software is not gonna teach itself in the same
Correct.
way that artificial intelligence can do.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine training the AI tool to become smarter and smarter over time, how exponentially helpful that could be, it's just mind-boggling. So
yeah, you're absolutely
cool.
right. And to dovetail into that, another example, we all know ChatGPT, right? Everyone does. But it's great, but then it has its limitations, and some people are up in arms about its limitations. It's only been around, for not that long. It's going to get smarter over time. So nothing's ever perfect in this world with any software, anything. So I think, but it's more correct than not correct, if that makes sense. But yeah, to your point, it's going to get smarter over time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't use that as a reason not to do a small pilot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you all. Anmol, thank you for driving and keeping us on track. Fatimah, Jerry, last thoughts?
Thank you so much,
guys.
everyone, for attending. We really, really appreciate it. Give us a call. We are work as a team. We understand your environments and your issues, and we have solutions to help you combat those. We really, really appreciate you joining today, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.